Hello, Oscar again. It's Grandpa here, and of course it's Moosey. Say hello, Moosey. Hello, hello, says Moosey. Are you okay, Moosey? Yep, I'm fine. Am I looking after you okay? Yep, you are. Okay, so lots of love from me and from Granny and Auntie Anna, and lots of love to you and your sister Annabelle and Mummy and Daddy. And we're going to read a little bit more of how to train your dragon. And if you remember, Hiccup was going through the novice trial and he wasn't doing very well, was he? And Stoik, his dad, was looking very solemn. Novices of the tribes, Stoik bellowed grimly. This is a very bad day for all of you. You have failed the final test of the initiation program. By the fierce law of the Inner Isles, this means that you should be cast out from the tribes into exile forever. I do not want to do this, but not only because my own son is among you, but also because it will mean that a whole generation of warriors is lost to the tribes. But we cannot ignore our law. Only the strong can belong. In case the blood of the tribes should be weakened, only heroes can be hooligans and meatheads. Oh gosh, Oscar, what's going to happen? Stoik jabbed a fat finger at the heavens. Furthermore, he carried on, the god Thor is really very angry. This is not the moment to weaken our laws. Thor let out a great crash of thunder as if to underline this point. Under normal circumstances, said Stoik, the ceremony of exile would start now, but going to sea in weather like this would mean certain death for all concerned. As an act of mercy, I will allow you one more night of shelter under my roof, and first thing tomorrow morning you will be set ashore on the mainland to fend for yourselves. From this moment forth you are all banished and may not talk to any other member of your tribe. Oh, Oscar, that's awful, isn't it? The thunder crashed all around the boys as they stood, heads bowed in the rain. Pity me, for this is the saddest thing I've ever had to do, to banish my own son, said Stoik sadly. The crowd murmured sympathetically, applauding the nobility of their leader. A chief cannot live like other people, said Stoik, looking almost pleadingly at Hiccup. He has to decide what is for the good of the tribe. Suddenly Hiccup was very angry. Well, don't expect me to pity you, said Hiccup. What kind of father thinks his stupid laws are more important than his own son? And what kind of stupid tribe is this anyway, that it can't just have ordinary people in it? Stoik stood, is a pretty good point, isn't it, Oscar? Stoik stood looking down at his son in surprise and shocked for a moment. Then he turned round and trudged off. The tribes were already running off the beach and scrambling up the hillsides towards the shelter of the village. Lightning coming down all around them. Oh, that must have been scary. I'm going to kill you, hissed snot-louted Hiccup. A fireworm snarling menacingly from his shoulder. Farmer's a horrible dragon, isn't he? First thing after we're banished, I'm going to kill you. And he ran off after the others. I've lost my tooth, Tuthus complained whinily. Came out when I bit that fireworm dragon. Hiccup took no notice. He looked up at the heavens, beside himself with fury, as the wind scooped up seawater in handfuls and flung it straight into his face. Oh, look, there's poor Hiccup, looking very sad and toothless, his dragon. Just once, yelled Hiccup. Why couldn't you let me be a hero? Just once. I didn't want anything amazing, just to pass this stupid test, so I could become a proper Viking like everybody else. Thor's thunder boomed and crackled above him blackly. Okay then, screamed Hiccup. Hit me with your stupid lightning. Just do something to show you're thinking about me at all. But there were to be no bolts of lightning for Hiccup. Thor clearly didn't think he was important enough for an answer. The storm moved on out to sea. Ooh, look. There's the storm clouds. And we're now at chapter 11. It says, Thor is angry. Ooh. The storm raged through the whole of that night. Hiccup lay unable to sleep as the wind hurled about the walls, like 50 dragons trying to get in. Oh, that sounds scary, Oscar. Let us in, shrieked the wind. We're very, very hungry. Out in the blackness and way out to sea, The storm was so wild and the waves so gigantic that they disturbed the sleep of a couple of very ancient sea dragons indeed. The first dragon was averagely enormous, about the size of a largest cliff. Well, cliffs can be pretty big, can't they, Oscar? The second dragon was gobsmackingly vast. He was that monster mentioned earlier in the story, the great beast who had been sleeping off his Roman picnic for the past 6 centuries or so, the one who had recently been drifting into a lighter sleep. The great storm lifted both dragons gently from the seabed like a couple of sleeping babies and washed them on the swell of one indescribably enormous wave onto the long beach outside Hiccup's village. And there they stayed, sleeping peacefully, while the wind shrieked horribly all around them like wild Viking ghosts having a loud party in Valhalla, until the storm blew itself out and the sun came up on a beach full of dragon and very little else. Ooh, what's going to happen now, Oscar? The first dragon was enough to give you nightmares. The second dragon was enough to give your nightmares. Imagine an animal about 20 times as large as Tyrannosaurus Rex. Well, he's pretty big, isn't he, Oscar? 20 times bigger. Wow. More like a mountain than a living creature. A great, glistening, evil mountain. He was so encrusted with barnacles he looked like he was wearing a kind of jewelled armour. But where the little crustaceans and the coral couldn't get a grip, in the joints and crannies of him you could see his true gut colour. A glorious dark green. It was the colour of the ocean itself. He was awake now and he had coughed up the last thing he had eaten, the standard of the 8th Legion, with its pathetic ribbon still flying bravely. He was using it as a toothpick, and the eagle was proving very useful for teasing out those irritating little pieces of flesh that get stuck between your 20-foot back teeth. Can you imagine back teeth 20 feet long? The first person to discover the dragons was Bad Breath the Gruff, who set out very early to check how his nets had fared in the storm. He took one look at the beach, rushed to the chief's house and woke him up. "We have a problem," said Bad Breath. What a lovely name. "What do you mean, a problem?" snapped Stoik the Vast. Stoik had not slept at all. He had lain awake worrying. What kind of father did put his precious laws before the life of his son? But then what kind of son would fail the precious laws that his father had looked up and believed in all his life? By morning, Stoik had made the awesome decision that he was going to reverse the solemn pronouncement he had made on the beach and unbanish Hiccup and the other boys. "It is weak of me, weak," said Stoik to himself gloomily. Squid-Face the Terrible would have banished his son in the twinkling of an eye. Loudmouth the Gouty, what a lovely name, would have positively enjoyed it. What is the matter with me? I should be banished myself. No doubt that is what Mogadon the Meathead is going to suggest. All in all, Stoik was not in a state to deal with any more problems. "There are a couple of humongous dragons on the long beach," said Bad Breath. "Tell them to go away," said Stoik. "You tell them," said Bad Breath. Stoik stomped off to the beach. He returned again, looking very thoughtful. "Did you tell them?" asked Bad Breath. "Tell it?" said Stoik. "The larger dragon has eaten the smaller one. I didn't like to interrupt. I think I shall call a council of war." The hooligans and the meatheads woke that morning to the terrible sound of the big drums summoning them to a council of war, only used in times of dreadful crisis. Hiccup awoke with a start. He had hardly slept at all. Toothless, who had crept into bed with Hiccup the night before, was nowhere to be seen, and the bed was stone cold, so he had obviously been gone for some time. Hiccup dragged his clothes on hurriedly. They had dried overnight and were so stiff with salt that it was like putting on a shirt and leggings made out of wood. He wasn't sure what he was meant to do, as this was the morning he was supposed to go into exile. He followed everybody else to the great hall. The meatheads had spent the night there anyway, because it had not been the weather for camping. On the way, he bumped into Fishlegs. He looked as if he had slept as badly as Hiccup. His glasses were on crooked. "What's happening?" asked Hiccup. Fishlegs shrugged his shoulders. "Where's Horror Cow?" asked Hiccup. Fishlegs shrugged his shoulders again. Hiccup looked around at the crowd pushing its way towards the great hall and noticed there was not a domestic dragon to be seen. Normally, they were never far from their master's heels and shoulders, yapping and snarling and sneering at each other. There was something faintly sinister about their disappearance. Nobody else had noticed. There was a tremendous babble of excitement, and such a crush of enormous Vikings that not everybody could get into the Great Hall. Dear oh dear, and there was a big jumble of barbarians shouting and shoving outside. Stoik called for silence. "I've called you here today, Boyne Stoik, because we have a problem on our hands. A rather large dragon is sitting on the long beach." The crowd was deeply unimpressed. Excuse me. They were hoping for a more important crisis. Mogadon voiced the general disapproval. "The big drums are only used in times of ghastly deadly peril," said Mogadon in amazement. You have summoned us here at a horribly early hour." Mogadon had not slept well on the stone floor of the great hall with only his helmet for a pillow. "Just because of a dragon? I do hope you're not losing your grip, Stoik," he sneered, hoping that he was. "This is no ordinary dragon," said Stoik. "This dragon is huge, enormous, gobsmackingly vast. I've never seen anything like it. This is more of a mountain than a dragon." Not having seen the Dragon Mountain, the Vikings remained unimpressed. They were used to bossing dragons about. "The dragon," said Stoik, "must of course be moved, but it is a very big dragon. What should we do, old Wrinkly? You're the thinker in the tribe." "You flatter me, Stoik," said old Wrinkly, who seemed rather amused by the whole thing. "It's a Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus, and a particularly big one, I'd say. Very cruel, very intelligent, ravenous appetite. But my field is early Icelandic poetry, not large reptiles. Professor Jobbish is the Viking expert on the subject of dragons. Perhaps you should consult his book on the subject." "Of course," said Stoik. "How to Train Your Dragon, wasn't it? I do believe that Gobber burgled that very book from the Meathead Public Library." He gave a naughty look at Mogadon the Meathead. "This is an outrage, boom, Mogadon. That book is Meathead property. I demand its instant return, or I shall declare war on the spot." "Oh, put a sock in it, Mogadon," said Stoik. "With soppy librarians like yours, what can you expect?" The hairy, scary librarian blushed a delicate pink and shook in his size 18 shoes. "Baggy Bum, hand me the book from the fireplace," yelled Stoik. Baggy Bum, can you imagine being called that? Baggy Bum stretched out one of his great octopus arms and picked the book off the shelf. He lobbed it across the heads of the crowd, and Stoik caught it, to much cheering. Morale was high. Stoik bowed to the hordes and handed the book to Gobber. "Gobber, Gobber, Gobber," yelled the crowd. It was Gobber's moment of triumph. A crisis demands a hero, and he knew he was the man for the job. His chest swelled with self-importance. "Oh, it's nothing really," he bellowed. Modestly, "a bit of basic burglary, keeps me in practice." "Shh," hissed the crowd like sea snakes as Gobber cleared his throat. "How to Train Your Dragon," announced Gobber solemnly. He paused. "Yell at it." There was another pause. "And," said Stoik, "yell at it, and..." "That's it," said Gobber. "Yell at it." "There's nothing in there about the Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus in particular?" asked Stoik. Gobber looked through the book again. "Not as such," said Gobber, "just a bit about yelling at it, really." Said Stoik. "It's brief, isn't it? I've never noticed before, but it is brief. Brief but to the point," he added hastily, "like us Vikings. Thank Thor for our experts. Now," said Stoik, in his most chief-like manner, "since it's such a large dragon..." "Vast," interrupted old Wrinkly happily. "Gigantic. Stupendously enormous. 5 times as big as the big blue whale. God, can you imagine, Oscar?" "Yes, thank you," old Wrinkly said Stoik. "Since it is indeed on the rather large side, we're going to need a rather large yell. I want everybody on the cliff tops yelling at the same time." "What shall we yell?" asked Baggy Bum. "Something brief and to the point." "Go away," said Stoik. The tribes of Meathead and hooligans gathered at the top of the cliffs of the long beach and looked down at the impossibly vast serpent stretched out on the sand, smacking its lips as it devoured the last mortals of its late unfortunate companion. It was so big that it seemed unlikely that it could be alive, until you saw it move like an earthquake or a trick of the eyes. There is a time when size is really important, thought Hiccup to himself, and this is one of them. Okay, well, we're going to... there's a picture of Stoik flexing his elbows. He's about to yell. Great story, and I hope you like it, Oscar. and we'll continue next week. And lots of love from me and Granny and Auntie Anna, and from Moosey to you and your sister and Mummy and Daddy. See you soon. Bye. Bye.